was after my second year overseas and COVID had just hit. So that was probably the longest time that I've been home for majority of the season. I wasn't really getting paid that much at the time. We had a conversation and he's an accountant, so he understands money. He was just like, this is something that you really want to do. Do you have anything to show for it right now? And that question really hit home for me because it was a turning point from a goal this route playing overseas, especially after COVID. I would have to make it worthwhile. If not, then I might as well just figure it out, hang things up because a lot of clubs weren't paying that much.
Today, we are joined by Stephen Brown, a professional basketball player for the last 8 years, a Bucknell graduate, and a man who values family and his faith. We're talking about his mindset, living in a place where people don't understand you, and how to handle frustrations and disappointments all along the way. Stephen, you played everywhere, from Russia to Italy, Germany, France, Turkey, Estonia, and more. When did you know you wanted to play overseas?
I knew I wanted to play overseas probably a little bit after my senior year of high school. I was actually looking at my photos the other day and saw, like on a yearbook, it puts, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years or different things like that. And I actually saw that I said, I want to have a successful college career and have the opportunity to play overseas. So to see that I was saying that in high school to now actually to be living it out was, I guess you could say, a dream come true. So probably from senior year of high school, it didn't really start to become realistic to me probably to my senior year of college. Once, I had a good season and agents started to reach out, that's when I kind of knew that it could be a possibility.
It's like you manifested it all the way back as early as high school. What are your thoughts on once you put it out in the universe, it becomes more likely?
I mean, I'm always a big person, to write the vision and, just wanted to put it out there. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, at that point, I knew I was going to college and just wanted to see how far I can take it. That's always been my thing of how high can I take this? And if the opportunities come, just try to take advantage of it. So to be able to say that and then 8 years later to have an actual professional career, I mean, I have really no complaints.
What's the difference between the Steven that started playing professionally 8 years ago versus the Steven that's here today?
Wow. I would say I'm more mindful. I'm more understanding of the business side of overseas basketball. The other thing is just understanding that basketball has been a tool. I would say before year one, even used to think that basketball was everything. I have to make sure I do this every day. I have to make sure, like, just very particular and, not take into consideration things that just happen in life, whether that's injuries, things that are just out of my control. So now I would say going into year eight, Steven is more, understanding of situations, doesn't really harp on just, ball is life. I know this whole thing is ball is life. Trying to change that mentality year by year. And honestly, the more pressure I took off myself, I started to play better because I realized that there's more to life than basketball. There's family, there's other interests. So that's what I'd probably say is the biggest difference between year one, Steven, and year eight. Skill wise, has always kind of been there, speed, whatever, but definitely the mindset of how I just see basketball as a whole.
Have that conversation all too often where athletes have their identity tied up in their sport, and then once the game ends, whether it's injury or your career just comes to an end, they don't know who they are. Do you
Yeah.
remember a particular time or season where you started to make that shift?
Yeah, so it was kind of, I guess you could say, two situations. The biggest one I would definitely say is probably year three. I went into the season. I was finally being able to play at the top level in France. And within the first few months there, I got injured. It was my first, I guess you could say, major injury where no surgery or anything like that, but had a tear in my hip flexor. And the team said, you can't do anything for the next 6 weeks. During that time, it was kind of mentally challenging because it was the first time I had to sit out for a long period of time. I didn't know if the team was going to keep me, if they were going to they did bring somebody in for my position. All those different questions of, is the team going to be better without me? Are they going to move on from me? Will I be the same player to come back? And honestly, after the injury, it allowed me to kind of figure out what did I enjoy doing outside of basketball. And me and my wife was with me at the time. So that's when we kind of got into traveling and giving us time to just explore, this lifestyle of things that we've always talked about when I'm done playing and then just realize like, why don't we just do this while we're still playing? And, even coming back off of that injury, I still wasn't the same player. It took me about 2 to 3 months. Luckily, I had a coach who knew of my game. Overall, I didn't have the best year. We finished last place and different things like that. Players were here, players were fired. And the fact that it was just an up and down year for me, physically and mentally, I even started, that was the first time I actually got involved with mental health or just, going to therapy for performance and different things like that. So it opened a whole nother side that I didn't know that I needed, not only as a basketball player, but just as a person, just holding on to a lot of different things that is needed to let go. So I would say that year three is kind of where I made that change of not putting a lot of focus on just basketball, but seeing what other things can basketball provide and just interest off the court.
Yeah. And it's never easy when you have to sit out with injury, especially if it's not something that happens common throughout your career. What are some of the other things that have been difficult along your journey?
Early on in my journey, the first thing was definitely being alone. I would say my first 4 years definitely had to learn how to get comfortable of just being by yourself. And within this lifestyle, everybody else talks about, going overseas and playing. It's not the same lifestyle you had in college. So, of course, having to deal with language barriers or the business side of things that you can't really control, day to day life, things that you once had at home, you don't have in a specific country, and things that you have to kind of adapt to. So those first years were definitely dealing with, loneliness and really asking myself, is this something that I really want to do, for my life or, to make a living? Sacrificing, I'm big on family, so sacrificing, missing big family events, birthdays, weddings, and having to really understand or ask yourself, does it really matter? Is it really worth the cost? Those are kind of the early struggles that I probably had to deal with. And, once I got married, other things started to come into play in terms of, do we want to start a family overseas? Now I have a daughter, and a lot of different questions of these things that has come into play of while my wife was pregnant, it was, do we have the baby overseas? Do we have the baby stateside? Do you go back home during, a certain part of the season? Or do you stay during the whole season? So just every stage of life come with its own questions and just figuring out how to adapt to it throughout my career. But like right now, I'm by myself out here. My wife is back at home. It kind of, this part of the season is definitely one of the toughest because, they're home. I'm still here. I'm also still dealing with the injury, haven't been playing for the last month and a half. All of the things that I kind of dealt with in my first years, and now having to deal with them all at once, I'm a lot calmer. I know how to understand them. I know where to kind of place my feelings. I have other things that I'm interested in, which, prep me to create more content, having time to give out more information to other players who are in similar situations. So I don't overthink a lot of those situations that I used to early on in my career.
If you had to say three things, what are three tips for rolling with the punches? You explained a lot of different challenges that you're dealing with, and it's life as usual as an overseas athlete, correct?
Yeah.
But what are three tips you wish you knew sooner about rolling with the punches?
The number one I would definitely say is control what you can control. By that, I always mean you can control, basketball life, but in this lifestyle, there's probably like 30% of what you can honestly control. You can't control your playing time. You can't control if the ball goes in. You can't control if the team wants you, if they fire you. Even you getting injured sometimes it's just freak accidents that just happen. And kind of just rolling with this. So I mean, if you can just control what you control, when those things that are outside of your control come into play, you're more centered, be more in that peace about it. Another thing is, just always be ready for the opportunity in this lifestyle, especially coming up in the summertime. Everybody's in contract season and figuring out, where am I going to go next? What is the next thing that I'm going to do? What is next season going to look like? Am I going to make the same amount of money? So it's a lot of questions during that time. And I've been in seasons where I got a call and then I got to fly out the next day. So it's just, when that opportunity does present itself, to just be ready with it. And lastly, I would just say be present and enjoy the moment. Being an overseas basketball player, just being an athlete in general, we have a very short time span, even though majority of our lives have been, playing the sport that we love or different things like that. But playing at a high level, it's a very short time span considering the rest of your life. So just being present, being, thankful. I always try to be, grateful for the opportunities that I'm in, despite being out or different things like that. So always just trying to have gratitude. So those were the three advice I would give with in terms of just rolling with the punches.
I love your emphasis on staying present. The present is really precious and we take it for granted sometimes, or we don't even realize when our mind goes to the future or the past. What's something that very few people know about the business side of basketball overseas?
The top things that I would definitely say is um, it's a business where it comes down to, who knows who. So you can be one of the top, you can be a great player, but may not have access because you don't have an agent that is, in with a certain team or a certain club, a certain country. So it's definitely like doing it by yourself is doable, but making it at a certain level, you can't do it by yourself a lot of the times. You kind of need an agent or somebody that's familiar with the club and they kind of funnel through those different ways, I guess you can say, in terms of making a team. I've also realized, from being fired on different teams, you could be the nicest person possible, but if you don't perform and don't do your job on games, your spot can easily be taken. And it's not nothing personal, it's just a part of the business. You're seen more as an asset rather than a person. A lot of the times it's, the coaches, the teams, they have a lot of pressure from the sponsors, the people that are paying to make up the club, make up the organization, sponsors, donors. A lot of those people have more control than we think. So if you don't perform, they have a huge say on whether or not that you deserve to be on the team, whether they get rid of you. No matter how professional you are as a person, whether you show up every day or not, it's just you just have to be okay. Like that's a part of the business. And a lot of different times, like I mentioned before, on the financial side of things, that's why I've kind of gotten into sharing my story and helping other athletes is our lives are a lot different than a 9 to 5 job, whether you're making 5,000 a month untaxed or $50,000 untaxed. When you receive that money, it's up to you to be responsible for it. There's no okay, there's no Roth IRA. There's not many setups for players that are coming to another country. So you have to kind of set all those different things up for yourself to help you even have a future after playing. I didn't really know that early on. I just assumed that like, okay, I'm receiving this money. Maybe the team will put it away into like my own okay and different things like that. No, because some teams are late, some teams don't pay on time, and sometimes they pay in cash to avoid taxes, a lot of different things. So it's really up to you to take responsibility for your own finances and keeping track of everything that you've gained throughout the way. If not, you'll just be in a complete cycle of waiting to the next contract, waiting to the next money. And then at that point, you're just trying to play to survive and not really get to enjoy the benefits of all the hard work that you've put in.
You're educating people financially. I want to take a step back for a second. Can you share the story of the conversation you had with your father that said, "What do you have to show for it?"
Yeah, it was after my second year overseas and COVID had just hit. So that was probably the longest time that I kind of been home for majority of the season. I wasn't really getting paid that much at the time, but he kind of, we had a conversation and he's an accountant, so he understands money. And he, in the middle of a conversation, he was just like, this is something that you really want to do. Do you have anything to show for it right now? And that question really kind of hit home for me because it was a turning point from a goal this route playing overseas. See, after COVID, I would have to make it worthwhile. If not, then I might as well just figure it out, hang things up because a lot of clubs weren't paying that much. And after that conversation, I kind of really got into my own financial literacy of what that looks like. How can I create things on my own or setting up systems for myself where I can walk away from a season and have money saved up. And I also had conversations with players that have been playing overseas for 8 to 10 years, veteran guys, and figuring out like, asking those questions of how do you save your money? How do you prepare for the summertime? And they gave me a lot of good advice that I still use to this day of how to put certain amount of money away when you get paid. Try to living off of a little bit of money as much as possible while you're overseas because you pretty much don't pay for things. And a lot of the materialistic stuff that we, want, whether that's clothes or different things like that, they'll always be there. But you don't know when a team's gonna happen, is gonna fire you. not going to know when a global event or something like that is going to happen. So having that conversation with my dad just kind of, I guess, made me more interested and also wanted something. I guess I wanted to prove to myself of like, okay, I want to make this work. How can I keep this going? And that just kind of spiraled and just kept things going where 5 or 6 years later, I could still have something to show for it now in terms of, being married, being able to provide for my family. Bought our first house last year while still playing. I didn't know that was possible or think that was possible. So just all these different goals that I had set out, I've still been able to hit while still playing.
It's awesome. And who specifically are you trying to help with their financial literacy for people listening?
Definitely those that are starting out in their career. Um, Rookies or guys that have been playing 3 to 4 years. I got a lot of messages from guys that are early on in their career, or even some college guys that are knowing they're going overseas, just want an understanding of what does overseas life look like and just want as much financial literacy. So it was encouraging to me that, the information or experiences that I personally have are things that other people are also experiencing and just want to help the next person, whether that rookie can avoid 3 or 4 years of not having anything set up. Like that would be a tremendous blessing to me. It's just a way that I've just wanted to give back to the overseas basketball community because I've been on teams with, now I'm considered the vet of the team. I've had conversations with, second or third year guys and that are very good players, and they just always ask questions about, finances or what to do with my money, taxes. I just figured if they're asking, then there's thousands of players that have the same questions on their mind.
Yeah, so if that's you listening to this episode, Steven's your guy.
I appreciate it. You can reach out to me if you have any questions or any concerns. I'll do my best to direct you in the right direction.
I want to shift gears here for a second. What's it like to live somewhere where very few people understand you?
It's tough. At the same time, there's growth, the opportunity to just be open. As an American, we kind of have this, I guess you could say, stereotype of thinking that our way is the best way. So if you're able to just strip the stereotype and actually, embrace the differences, embrace the cultures. A lot of the time, they just want to see that you're trying. Like, you don't have to be perfect, but even if it's a simple hello or thank you in their language, they at least take, into consideration, like, oh, okay, like he's trying instead of just, thinking that your way is the best way as being a foreigner. So, I mean, it definitely has its challenges, but usually after about 2, 3 months, I kind of get an understanding of where I'm at, restaurants, people. Usually I try to show my face a lot of the times or wear the team gear. People in the public kind of have an understanding of like why I'm here. So it's not just like a profiling. A lot of the times I wouldn't say it. I have had experiences where they're racist. It's just that it's just different to them. And it's like they're just really curious to know like why are you here? In
Mhm.
terms of like,
Yeah.
get away from here. Like they just really want to understand like why would you come from America to the small country, the small city to play a sport? Like why don't you do that at home? So I mean, I've realized like the more that I've embraced it and understood, the cultural differences, the easier it is to kind of, understand the pace of, life and language barriers over here. And Google Translate is like on speed dial.
And part of that cultural shift is food, restaurants. What are some of your
Food,
Yeah, I'm curious, what are some of your favorite meals that you thought you never would have had in your life?
I would never think at one point that I would enjoy lamb until I came overseas. Certain types of soups that I've eaten in Russia and Poland, some of the best countries that I've had soups. While I'm overseas, majority of the times I cook most of the food at home. In terms of breaking down foods that I've liked or experiences by country, I would say my top three, not in no particular order, have been Greece, Turkey, and Germany. Now, it's a little, I would say I'm a little unbiased to opinion, but maybe I haven't had a great experience thus far, but the Italian food just wasn't, one of my top yet. Even though I heard ravings about it. I had a few good meals here and there, but I tell my teammates sometimes, I'll be like, "I honestly prefer American pizza over Italian pizza."
Hey, man, everyone has their own taste.
Yeah, I don't, if I'm out, I just kinda keep my mouth shut and eat what is available to me, but deep down, I can't wait to get back to a Domino's pizza.
It's hilarious. That's awesome. Steven, very quickly, how does your faith play into your whole entire journey?
It's the center of everything, not just basketball, just I honestly wouldn't even be in this position without my faith. I've came to the realization that when I realized that God has given me the gift, God provided me the opportunities to even be in certain places that I know I'm not even supposed to be here based on like my background or where I came from. Small high school, small college, not really known, but then at top levels, 8 years overseas. That's nothing that God, Jesus being my Lord and Savior can only provide, and just kind of being grateful for that. And a lot of times, if I'm feeling, discouraged or doubting a lot of the different things, that's where my faith has been definitely the strongest. Going through injuries or being fired from the team, that's honestly at the lowest points is where I've been able to strengthen my faith the most. Because when you're out here alone, there's really nobody that can save you. Honestly, just being, I come from a background of, having, my dad's a pastor, my family, they have a church, but seeing who Christ is for myself and for my own, I just try to implement him and trusting him with every aspect of my life and try to share with others as much as possible, especially with players that live this overseas life. And a lot of them have realized that, like, yeah, I can't do it by myself. Like, and once you realize that our gifts and talents of who we are, comes from him, you can only be grateful and then using your talents to glorify him at the end of the day. So my faith is pretty much the center and try to just center around him as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. The faith is the one thing that impacts everything else.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Now that I have a family, a daughter, and I can't physically be there, it's like all I can do is pray and ask God for his protection. Kinda just have to sit with that. So, I mean, I realize the older I've got and the more responsibilities, I can't do it all by myself. I have to rely on God to, protect, provide, and just everyday life, everyday daily bread.
Steven, you've got a great heart. You've got a ton of experience and a lot of value to give. Where can people find you?
They can find me on TikTok at SL Brown 2, and you can also find me on Instagram with the same SL Brown 2. Later on this summer, I'll be giving out a course for financial literacy, how to deal with contracts, how to save, how to budget for overseas athletes, and for people that enjoy travel hacking, different things like that. So I also releasing all those different things throughout the summer. Those are the platforms that you can find me on right now.
Awesome. Steven, I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have one final question for you. Who else would benefit from listening to this conversation? If you have someone in mind, go ahead and share the episode with them right now. If you don't think of anyone immediately, go ahead and leave us a review on whatever platform you're on so people just like you can find the episode. Thank you for your time. Stay strong.